In today's video, we're going to be talking about buying the gold versions of Premier League players before they go out of packs for Team of the Season. So, just before the video does start, a quick little ad on a trading service I offer over on Twitch. For the cheapest premium trading service for just £4, €4, or free with Amazon Prime. You'll get yourself daily trading and investing guides covering both Xbox and PlayStation with an array of different techniques depending on your budget. I've been trading for over 10 years, making over 100 million on multiple titles, and recently making over 10 million in the first month for the last 3 years. So in today's video, we are going to be covering what is the whole trend about buying gold cards before they go out of packs. We're going to be talking about how well did Most Consistent do just this week when they went out of packs. We're going to talk about how did the Prems do last year when they went out of packs. We're going to be talking about what went favourable and unfavourable last year when Prem players went out of packs. And then to end off, we're going to be talking about the players I recommend investing, going off the rest of the information I've given you this video. So briefly, what is the trend? Well, the trend is that we are looking to buy the gold cards of players who are likely to get a Prem Team of the Season, because the idea is if you get a Team of the Season card, your gold card can't be packed, which as a result of your gold card not being able to be packed for a whole week means that the supply is halted. That gold card can't be supplied anymore. And as a result, if the player is demanded but there is no increase in supply, what happens is people buy the cards and they take them off the market, and the supply dwindles and dwindles and dwindles. As a result, what can happen is the gold card then becomes quite expensive because it basically becomes quite rare. So what we do is we identify what gold cards do we think people are going to be buying. Is that going to be for SBCs? Is that going to be for their team? And then we buy them, and the idea is as the week goes on, the player becomes more and more expensive because of how rare they become. Now what we're going to do is show you guys this trend working in action with the Most Consistent. So this week, obviously, Most Consistent have been out of packs for the last 4 or 5 days, so we're not quite at the peaks of what these players are going to hit, but we can show you this trend working in this week. So you've got someone like Alexis Sanchez, obviously has gone and got himself a Most Consistent Team of the Season, and his card went out of packs on the Friday. So before going out of packs, he was no more than 900 coins. We can see right here that he is 1.8k, so he has doubled in price. So now we've got to look at him and go, okay, why is he doubled in price? Well, the reason he's doubled in price is because one of the generic SBCs needed centre forwards. But on top of that, he's used for the League SBCs. One of the League SBCs needs you to use basically a full Ligue 1 or Eredivisie team, and therefore a lot of the Ligue 1 and the Eredivisie. Same with Thuram. Thuram has also risen through the week for the exact same reason. We then get to the cards like Morata. Morata on Friday was 1.2, Morata's already 2k. Morata was very useful in yesterday's generic SBC and therefore has done well. The reason he was useful in yesterday's generic SBC is because he's Spanish from the La Liga, which offered strong kind of links and allowed people to easily get chemistry. We then head to the likes of Koeman. Koeman before going out of packs was about 16k. Koeman is up to 19k, which isn't too bad, not as high as an ROI on the others, but not too bad nonetheless. That's because he's been used in some of the cheaper SBCs, if that be the hero pack pick we got the other day, and maybe a few of the well-demanded player SBCs. And then get to Gabriel Jesus, another player that's performed very, very well. 2.9k before out of packs, now up to 4.8k, nearly doubling there, but not quite. And again, he's also done quite well because I believe he's been useful for the Joelinton objective, which again got leaked a week in advance. We already knew that he would do potentially well because of that. And then I believe he's probably got a little bit of somehow weakening demand, but I believe it's mainly down to crediting Joelinton, in all fairness. And his card is for some reason a lot rarer than other 83s. As you can see right here, he never sits at the discard. He's always going for about 1.5 to 2k, which means if he's out of packs and he's already rare, then it's only going to make him rarer. But what you need to bear in mind is not every player out of packs does well. I like to use the analogy, it's like having a child and leaving that child in a supermarket. If you do not like that child, you might be tempted to abandon that child in the supermarket because, hey, they're doing you a job. Or, if you've got a child you actually like, you might be like, I forgot my child at the supermarket, I better go back and get it. And what I mean by this is, if people don't actually want something, no one's going to miss it when it's out of packs. Whereas if people actually want something, maybe like Gabriel Jesus is useful for objectives, they're going to miss him out of packs, and as a result he's going to go up. Now I'm not exactly saying Kim Min-jae would be left in a supermarket, but Kim Min-jae before going out of packs was only about a K. Kim Min-jae is now 1.1k, and the reason for that is, why would I buy Kim Min-jae? Why would I buy his gold card? Would I use him in Weekend League? Probably not unless I'm under utter poverty. Would I use him in an SBC? I mean, he's a Korean playing for Napoli. He doesn't exactly offer any strong links. Obviously, he got the Napoli links, but it's not quite Italian in the Serie A where he can offer those really good links. And as a result, Kidman J is just another gold rare card. Really, he's probably only about 200 coins more than some rubbish player like Achapon. And the reason for that is because the only thing that this guy's being used in is just generic SBCs. He's not being used in anything special, which means he's not having many people buying him, despite not being in packs. So just a quick overview, what makes the Amp most consistent? If they're used for the League SBC, aka Liga and Eredivisie, if they're good for generic SBCs, which is normally players from the same nation as their league, like Morata, or if they're about 82 to 85 rated, we see them being being used very commonly in upgrade SBCs. Now players like De Gea, Robertson, Silva didn't really work, and the reason for that is we just haven't had any SBCs that are insanely demanded that need 88 and 87 rated. We did have the Regio, who's relatively demanded, but again I believe he's like 90 rated, and that really isn't as demanded as maybe a cheap player pick. And the cheap player pick is potentially one of the reasons why you see the likes of Coman doing well, because of course someone, an 80k player pick is going to be completed a lot more than a 500k player SBC. So now what we're going to do is we're going to look at not how something this year's done, but how did this trend work last year? Because it did work with some players, and I've got to put them into multiple different groups. So we start off with the cheap players of Jota and Rice. Not many low-rated players in this team, literally it's just Jota and Rice. And interestingly enough, these guys did really well in the pre-hype, but as soon as they went out of packs, they crashed, or they just didn't do very well. The reason for that is basically, like what I'm teaching you right now, people are aware of this, and because people are aware of this, it means that people will cop onto this investment. Which means if you're not early enough, you're going to be copying onto it potentially at double the price. And then when the player goes out of packs, because so many people have bought them anticipating them being well demanded, and then they're not well demanded, they actually don't go up in price. If anything, sometimes go down in price. So this is something you need to bear in mind, and again, something I'll be covering in the investments at the end, is that you don't be buying players that everyone else has bought, because, as a result, they won't do well. So what I mean by this is that the Prem team season last year went out of packs on the 6th of May. This is the price 4 days prior to the 6th of May, 1.8k. But when he was going out of packs, he was up to 4.2k. He's over doubled going in the hype of him going out of packs. But you can see they didn't really rise, and that's because so many people bought him. Now, he did actually pick up towards the end of the week, because I believe I think there were some cheap player SBCs, and he's managed to somehow do quite well off the back of that. But we can see that he was relatively stagnant for a few days, because again, there's essentially more people investing than demanding him. But we can also see if you bought at the 4.2k, you're not really making anything too crazy, because you're already buying double what he was 3-4 days ago, potentially due to him being overinvested. We can then see this trend happen again with Declan Rice. He was 1.3k on the Monday. Before going out of packs, he got all the way up to 3.4k. But the reality is way more people invested in him than actually demand Declan Rice. And he went all the way from 3.4k down to 2.2k. Now, I did pick up to 3.3k, but there was more money selling him in the hype than there was actually, holding on to the card for him to go out of packs. And that was the trend with both the cheap players last year. I'm now going to show you the trend with a few high-rated players where we see the same sort of thing, but actually them just dropping in price. Trent actually is a exception. Last year, obviously, we had Chemistry. Because Chemistry doesn't exist in high-rated SBCs, we won't see these trends. But Trent actually went from 20 to 28. That's because you would have had SBCs near like 70, 80 Chemistry and high rating. And obviously there was a massive lack of high-rated left and right back. So Trent did well, but only because there was high chemistry and expensive SBCs, something we don't see nowadays. But if we look at someone like Alisson, who went out of packs on the 6th, he was 29k on the 6th. But you can see that this is just a regressive trend. He just went down and down and down. In fact, by the end of the week, he was still 26k. So there was really no money in him. Sorry, he was down 3k. So there was really no money in him. We saw this across the board. We saw this happen with the likes of Rodri. Again, started out of packs on 14k. Once again, you should probably look at this again. He went from 13 to 1450 before he went out of packs, so we can see there's a bit of pre-hype. But he didn't really do anything out of packs. He literally maybe went up a k, if that. So again, up a lot in the pre-hype. High-rated fodder last year didn't work during Prem Team season. And I will be covering this in a second, why it potentially didn't work last year, but it might work this year. Now moving underway with cards that are not necessarily all about the SBC fodder. Someone like Virgil van Dijk. Virgil van Dijk was a relatively well-demanded card last year. It's probably relatively demanded this year. We look at Van Dijk. Now, if you're buying him on the Monday, you got him for 30k. If you're buying him on the Friday, you were buying him at 31, so it's not too bad. Well, Van Dijk went from 31 all the way up to 44k out of packs. And that's not because he was 89 rated fodder, that's because he was a well-demanded card, and I'll show you later on that there's just a lack of centre-backs in the Prem Team this season. In fact, you just had Van Dijk and Diaz, and therefore Van Dijk being a million coins, the only one you could pack was Diaz, which led people to go back and buy Van Dijk for their full Prem teams. We can also see this trend happen slightly with Cancelo. Once again, there was only one left back, which was team of season Cancelo, which was relatively expensive. A few days before going out packs, 15k, throwing out packs, 15.5k. Out of packs, he did go up to like 17.2, so he went up like 2k. It's nothing too crazy, but it's just another trend of showing you that someone who's weakenly demanded can actually rise out of packs. It doesn't all have to be SBC fodder. Back to SBC fodder, De Bruyne, someone who is excessively high rated, didn't do very well. Out of packs, 41k by the end of the week, he was down at 42k. So was out of packs for the whole week. Not so much weakenly demand. There was a lot more players replacing De Bruyne. I think Bernardo Silva had a cheap team of the season. We had cheap team of the season Rice. And as a result, no one was really buying his card. What I've also gone and done now is research every single SBC that came out during Prem team of the season last year to maybe explain why didn't the high rated fodder do well out of pack. So the SBCs we got last year was Akinfenwa, Phil Foden, Kulevevsky, Harry Kane, Dele Alli, and Morgan Gibbs-White. Now, the reoccurring trend across these players is they weren't actually too demanded. Now, Dele Alli had very good reception with 4.5 thousand uploads, 700 downvotes. That's a good ratio. But then you had someone like Phil Foden had 3,100 upvotes, but 2,600 downvotes. We then get to the likes of Akinfenwa, very high upvoted, but he was only 40k. He wasn't really going to shift fodder. And if we move to the likes of Kane, exact same thing. 3,600 downvotes and 2,300 upvotes. So the problem we had last year was that EA released a bunch of SBCs that just weren't demanded because they were so expensive and they just weren't deemed good enough cards for them being expensive. Obviously, Dele Alli was relatively expensive, but, I guess people warranted him having a very, very good card, and they said, you know what, I'm happy to pay 370k. But the problem is they were kind of off with some of the other high rateds, and as a result of being off with some of the other high rateds, it didn't allow there to be loads and loads and loads of fodder being put in. So you weren't seeing like 87s rise, 88s rise, and 89s rise because the SBCs weren't well demanded. Obviously, this year, there is a chance they are well demanded. Obviously, we don't really know what's coming out yet. There's no leaked SBC players. But it's it's a bit of a gamble. But last year, again, high rated did not work through Prem team of season. Even with the guaranteed team of season pack only being an 86 rated with one team of season, no movement or high rated fodder whatsoever. So we're now going to talk about which players do I think could do quite well this year, going off of all the information and research I've shown you. Now the prediction that I'm going to be taking as if this is what we believe is going to come out is going to be from the likes of Footbin. The predictor is actually scouting for FIFA. He's extremely experienced, and I've used him for years after years after years of pre-team of the week investing, because he's got very good analysis because he's just been doing this for so long. And I'm going for his judgment as in these are the players that can get one. Again, if you don't think they'll get one, just don't invest in the player. The players he's put in his team is Nick Pope in goal with Gabriel Saliba, Trippier as the defenders. He's going to put the midfielders as being Saka, De Bruyne, Odegaard and Rashford, with a forward of Mohamed Salah, Kane and Haaland. He's then put on the bench Botman, Luke Shaw, Rodri, Casemiro, Martinelli, Miggy Azalea and Ollie Watkins. So those are the players he's put in his predictions. So let me go through a few of these investments. Now I'll be honest with you, all these investments are kind of for the generic SBCs and low rated fodder. Just because high rated fodder didn't do well, feel free to pick some high rated fodder, but as you can see last year there was a low hit rate with the SBCs being well demanded. They didn't really do that well. You can gamble on them, but I think these will have a higher return on investment, aka you invest 100k, this is what you make the most coins on than if you invest 100k in high rated. So we're going to start off with the English guys. Luke Shaw is prime sort of generic SBCs. If you luck out, you can look he can look very good. The reason for this is the left back has a massive lack of the Premier League has a massive lack of high rated left backs. You've literally got Trippier, Shaw, and then you've got non-rares of Cucurella and Digny. Non-rares have next to no supply and therefore if heavily needed, become quite expensive quite fast. And Shaw again is the only English one. We talked earlier about Morata, how he did well because he was Spanish from the La Liga. Well, Shaw should do very well for the same thing. Now moving on to his English teammate of Saka. Saka is so good. I think the last time Saka went out of packs he hit 7k. And the reason for that is there's a lack of high rated right mids in the game. But even more so, there is a massive lack of high-rated right mid / right wings who are English from the Prem, especially gold rares. And that's why Saka, last time he went out of packs, was hitting the likes of 7k because this guy is just so good if you hit the jackpot with generic SBCs. Now he is 2k at the moment. I believe that's because of one of the generic SBCs that came out a day or two ago. But yeah, again, very favoured to get a team in the season. Hopefully he's not going to be one of these players that has been too invested because I mean, if we do look at his trends, he has been sitting at about 1.52k recently, and he was needed for the generic SBC, so I'd be happy to hedge my bets that, okay, he's not inflated because of overinvestment, and he's inflated because of current demand, which can work really well in your favour, because if he's rare going out of packs, then he can do very, very well out of packs, potentially like Gabriel Jesus. We then head to the next one with Saliba. Last time Saliba went out of packs was for his, whatever this was called, fancy card. He went up to 2.4k last time for the fancy card. Again, you know, not high rated, but he can do quite well for generic SPCs. Not as good as the English guys. Something I also quite like is the likes of Gabriel. High rated non-rares are some of the rarest cards in FIFA. Everyone discards non-rares, and again, they're harder to pack than like a 75 rated non-rare. Therefore, Gabriel can also do quite well. Again, if they're going to go down the Prem route, he can do quite well. I don't know if he's too favourite for a Prem team this season, I'll be honest with you. But yeah, Gabriel as a high rated non-rare can do well. We'll then move to Sven Botman. Again, I'm not too sure how favourable he is. High rated non-rare, same sort of thing. Especially if they're going to release a generic that needs Premier League players, we should see these doing quite well. We do see non-rare high rateds again do very, very well. If Maguire was going to get a team of the season, he'd be an even better investment. Because again, high rated non-rare and English. But he's not, so whatever. Now, the higher rated fodder, there isn't really too much of them. It's really just Trippier and Odegaard. Trippier and Odegaard are the only, I think, 82s to, well, other than Saka, 82s to 85s who are favourite to get a team in season. Other than that, you're looking at 86s, 87s, 88s, all the way up to 91s with the likes of De Bruyne. Again, you're more than welcome to go and gamble on the super high rated fodder, and there might be an amazing player SBC. It's just something you can't guarantee. We didn't get it last year, whereas obviously all the low rateds were really, really nice out packs, or at least nicely in the pre-hype. So that is going to go and wrap up pre-Prem team of season investing. Hopefully the video did help you guys and reassure you guys with some of the trends. Again, I do spend loads of time researching this just so I can throw it all up in a 10-15 minute video so you guys can get the information hopefully ASAP. In tomorrow's video, we are going to be covering buying the most consistent players before they go out of packs. Really, really nice trends on them last year. Again, I'll be going into that in very, very heavy detail, talking about how well I think this year's will do, and I kind of talked about the buy time. But thank you very much for watching today's video, and we shall see you guys with a brand new video tomorrow.